Hello, Rocky Ridge fourth graders. We're continuing Lunch Money. This is going to be Chapter 5, The Girl Across the Street. Greg Keaton had always lived on Maple Avenue. As a very young boy, Greg had sometimes noticed the girl across the street, who helped her dad rake leaves, and sometimes he helped her riding a tricycle around on her driveway. She looked like she was about his age, but she didn't go to the nursery school or his Sunday school, so Greg didn't know who she was. And he didn't care. Greg's world was small back then, and that little blonde girl wasn't part of it. Greg noticed the girl the way he noticed the neighborhood, dogs, the colors of flowers growing next to the front walk, or blinking yellow light at the corner. Even when they both started kindergarten at the same school, Greg went to the morning and the girl went afternoons. It was like they lived on different continents. The concrete ocean between them was only 35 feet wide, but young children never crossed it alone. For his 5th birthday, Greg got a big wheel, all blue, red, and yellow, with big, fat black tires. The hard plastic wheels made a huge rumbling sound, as loud as the trucks on Maple Avenue. The first day he had it, Greg rode his big wheel for at least 2 hours. Over and over, he rocketed down the driveway, yanked the handlebars to the right, and then roared along the sidewalk. His curly hair swept back from his high forehead. And when he noticed the girl across the street sitting on her front steps, watching him, Greg poured a little extra burst of speed, and he smiled and waved as he went gliding by. The girl waved back, but she didn't smile. Then, late one afternoon, about a week later, the little girl wasn't sitting on the steps when Greg went outside to ride. She was thundering around and around on her driveway on a big wheel of her own, except hers was pink and green and white. And when Greg went speeding out of his driveway and zipped along the sidewalk, she did the same thing, a mirror image. And when Greg stopped at the corner on 10th Street, then headed back towards his driveway, so did the girl across the street. When he sped up, so did she. When he jumped his feet to the ground, when he jammed his feet to the ground and slammed to a stop, she did too. Greg was annoyed, but he pretended to ignore her. He turned and slowly pedaled up toward the corner of 10th Street again. He didn't look, but he could tell by the sounds that the girl was doing the same thing over on her own sidewalk. Greg turned the big wheel around and put his feet on the pedals. Then he looked across the street, and the girl turned her big wheels around too. And she looked back at him, smiling. And when Greg nodded, they both took off. In seconds, Greg was zooming along at top speed, legs pumping, hands tight around the plastic grips. The sidewalk sloped slightly downhill as he neared his house. Greg started to ease. He had never gone down the block past his driveway before, but he glanced over and he could see that the girl wasn't slowing down. So Greg kept going, flying toward that corner where the tall blue mailbox stood. In the place where the tree roots had lifted up the sidewalk, Greg bounced off his seat, barely. Able to keep control. At this speed, if he tried to turn the corner on 9th Street, he'd flip over for sure. So the last possible second, Greg dug his sneakers into the sidewalk and skidded to a full stop, his front wheel inches from the curb. Looking quickly to the other side of Maple Avenue, Greg saw the girl had stopped too, also at the edge of the curb, and still smiling. Greg shouted across the street, "It's a tie!" The girl shook her head and shouted back, "Almost a tie!" Greg frowned. "Want to race again? Maybe tomorrow." "Because you're scared?" Greg shouted. The girl didn't answer, but she just kept smiling, turned her big wheel around, and started pedaling slowly up the street toward her driveway. That was the first of many big wheel races, with each of them ending as a tie or almost a tie. As soon as Greg learned the name of the girl across the street, Morris Shaw,